Hi, I'm Dan Cione, and this is Matt Ecott. We're here with Premier Equipment Cortland, and we're going to go over this Flex platform with you here. It's a 630. To show you some tips and pointers on pre-season checks you can do to ensure you have less breakdowns and more productivity. So one of the first things you want to check here before you, after you've hooked the head up to the feeder house, just go over your multi-coupler once again. Just make sure that all of your pins, everything's cleaned out that way. You get a lot of crop buildup on top of the feeder house, and sometimes there's more room for debris, moisture and contamination. So just make sure this is good and clean before you go to connect, as well as the poppets here as well. So, and again, on both ends, both the head side and the combine side, you want to make sure this is cleaned out here really well, and that the seals are pushed back in, no damage to the pins. Also, on our power shaft here, make sure the fittings get lubricated well. Also, there will be one here on the telescope on the rod end of it, so that it's good and free when you go to attach it. It just saves you some time, and make sure that your drive shaft itself, coupler is lubricated well. It just aids in installing the power shaft onto the combine. You can just check out briefly, make sure your everything's working that way. You can see just extra spots here, grease fittings and whatnot for the drive shafts. Just make sure all of your sheathing's intact, it's not broken that way. If we come around to this side here, we can have a look at the belt drive here for the knife and auger drive. Check your drive chains. Usually, this here we could probably tension a fair bit more yet, but you want to still be able to have side-to-side movement. At the same time, you can just inspect your sprocket for wear and whatnot. Check your idlers. You can take the tension off of your belt, just spin the idlers by hand. If you hear them growling or if they're loud, it might be time to replace it so that it's not broke down in the field. All of your tensioning is done here with your 15/16 adjustment nut here and your lock nuts. So make sure that you tighten these lock nuts when you're done. Prevents it from coming loose, obviously, in the field. You might want to just check up on here a bit. Just check your bushings, check for play in the bushings anywhere this way. And again, just check your tensioners, your idlers, make sure it's loose. All your hardware is tight. Check your height sensors as well, real briefly, for your header height sensors here, and any leaks on the float cylinders as well. Underneath here, just have a look at your wobble box. Just make sure there's no leaks anywhere that way. Make sure the hardware is tight on here. You can see here some of the skid shoes are starting to come off here. So it might be good to go over, if you raise the platform all the way up in the air, put in your safety stop and just go over and check underneath the head as well and make sure everything is tight, so you don't have to worry about anything falling off throughout the harvest. So some other things we can check here. You can check just some of the hydraulic lines, like here to your reel raise and lower cylinder here. Make sure that your seals are dry, no leaks there, no leaks at the fittings anywhere that way. Maybe raise the reel up and down and make sure that it does raise level. Sometimes you do have to bleed the reel system, but that's only if you're having issues that way. So if you want to check in here real quickly too as well while you're over here, just make sure that your skid shoes or pads here, that the reel actually moves forward and fore and aft like it's supposed to without any binding. Sometimes if you have issues where these are badly worn or they're starting to separate, you may hinder the reel fore-aft performance. So just have a look there. There is grease fittings as well. On the back side of here, you'll see for the actual reel drive. Just inspect it briefly for any cracks. And again, if you're going to be working on the reel, if you're going to be changing any fingers, anything, make sure that you raise the reel up all the way and install your lift locks here. You can check the bushings, make sure hardware is tight on your crop dividers here, and you should have just a little bit of float here, as it shouldn't slam down real hard. Just be able to lift it lightly with your fingers. You'll want to go over your reel again real quick. Just check all of your reel fingers, make sure they're replace any broken ones. They're reasonably inexpensive, and just make sure that you have smooth rotation of your reel. And then we can check over the knife as well. So some things we can check here real quick is just go over the whole section of the knife and just see if there's any broken knife sections. Obviously, you can change where you need to, if you see excessive wear or if there's actually knife sections that are broken. You can check your hold downs real quick. Should have a clearance in there about 20 to 30 thou. You shouldn't see any real heavy rubbing spots there. If you do, you may need to adjust the hold down slightly. This one here is getting a little bit sharp, just something to keep in mind. You have to. Other things we can check here too. Just go over the platform, just the floor, see, make sure there's no holes or any obvious signs of damage or cracks anywhere. Underneath, we're going to look real quick, and you can see. Maybe go over all of your skid shoes. This one here is going to need some work. You can see, just a matter of drilling out the old rivets, installing the new skid shoes. All of your auger fingers too. Some of them tend to pop out. You might want to just go over, check, and see that they're seated in there properly and that they aren't broken. The auger flighting, just have a look. Just make sure that there's no signs of any cracking anywhere. Just make sure there's probably some spots where you'll see they've been welded or repaired, but just make sure that your auger's in good working order so that everything feeds towards the feeder house properly. Check all of your fingers, make sure they're broken, and just verify your finger timing, which Matt will go over with you. Aside from that, we can move over to the right side of the combine and go over a few more things. Okay, over here we can just check a few more things. Obviously, any of the wiring and whatnot, just make sure, usually from sitting over the winter, sometimes you can get issues with mice and rodents getting in there and chewing on the wiring. So just kind of go over that, inspect it, make sure it's secured, it's not rubbing anywhere. Check your rear lift cylinders once again, just make sure there's no obvious leaks. We can just check and make sure we have no bracketry, anything bent that could alter our sensor readings here for your height position. Up here we have our real drive motor. Here's again our real 4-valve cylinder. Just verify the right side isn't leaking, no obvious signs of damage, all the hardware is intact. And real motor, we can have a quick look and make sure that there's no signs of any leaking or any damage that way. You can remove this cover just to inspect. Again, your bushings, make sure all the hardware is in there, the bushings aren't worn, and that your pads here aren't too badly worn that would cause the reel to bind when trying to move fore and aft. And again, on the right side, we're going to be looking at the same kind of maintenance things as on the left. Just make sure that here we have an air reel attachment here, so there's extra grease zerks and whatnot to go over as well. Obviously, when there's any kind of an attachment, there's a few more things to check over. That basically sums up the pre-season checks for a platform, the 630F we're looking at here today.
Hi, I'm Matthew Ecutt from Premier Equipment in Cortland, and we're just going to go over a few adjustments on the 600F series heads. Here, obviously, we're going to hook up your multi-point coupler to your multi-point onto the combine here. You're going to hook up your drive shaft up to your drive here on the reverser. And if you are going to run auxiliary head height sensing, this is where you would run that system as well. It is an option for a 600 series head. It has to be installed at your local dealership. On the auger heads, you want to make sure that you have your chain tension here adjusted right. So you're going to adjust that with a 15/16 wrench here. You want to make sure you do an inspection on the chain to make sure that it is not stretched like this one. You want that chain mating into the grooves of the drive sprocket nice and tight. You want to make sure you get this adjustment on the belt drive here tight. Make sure that it is properly adjusted. Make sure you have no loose parts, drive pulleys and sprockets on there. You want to make sure that your belt is good. Moving up to the wobble box here. Again, you want to adjust this drive here so that your cutter knife is center with the knife guards. You do that with this 18 mil here, up or down. Moving around to the knife hold downs. Again, 600 series heads, we want to make sure that you adjust the hold downs so that a business card here will go underneath of it. You do not want to put too much pressure on it, but as long as it kind of fits in there is the key. As you can see, some of the knife hold downs do wear out, so something like this should be replaced. All this affects the performance and cutting ability of this platform. Again, adjust the snouts on the ground, so you put your head down to the ground and make sure that you've got about an inch and a half gap here between your snout tips, or else you'll just wear the tips off of the points. Moving along here, auger fingers is critical. For feeding, obviously, you don't want fingers like this because they are ready to be snapped off. You want nice, firm auger fingers here. One thing you want to check is possibly the timing of your auger fingers. So you want these auger fingers fully extended at pointing out towards you. Okay, we are going to talk about a few adjustments that can be made outside. For the reel finger pitch, and it is done by this handle here. You pull this latch here and you can move the reel pitch as needed. Most guys are running it in the back position, I guess, for the fingers forward. Good rule of thumb for adjusting of cylinders and stuff, you just want to tip that crop into the auger. You don't want to be beaten on it or having the reel running too fast. So you accomplish this by in the cab. You can adjust your reel height here for like long stringy stuff. You're gonna be lifting your reel up. And then you have this adjustment, which is your reel fore-aft. And it is done in the cab as well. Another adjustment I wanted to point out is this auger timing for the fingers. It's a cam here, so you loosen these bolts off, these 4 bolts here, and you rotate this cam as you need it. If your auger timing is out, this is where you would adjust this. Auger height is adjusted by here. You want to have your auger 7/16 of an inch off the floor, and you want your 3 strippers adjusted at 1/8 of an inch gap between the stripper and the flighting. Now, down here we have sensors. You want to make sure that those sensors are reading correctly. This is for your right header height sensor. This is for your left header height sensor. If any of these are damaged, it could affect the performance of your machine. This concludes the 600 Series F check over and walk around. If you have any questions, please contact Premier Equipment.